So now we're ready to offer a few conclusions about fake news, what fake news is, and how it contributes to our understanding of how political realities are made. So it's something that very much fits into the idea that we've been talking about, which is that media are involved in the creation of reality. Our world wouldn't look the same if we didn't have the media industries that we do. Our world wouldn't look the same if we didn't use media in the way that we do. So, in that sense, fake news is something that's very much related to a set of ideas that have been around for a long while and also to interdisciplinary ideas. And it's super important to understand that what we do over here in media research is quite closely related to things that people do in other disciplines. And in particular, we've talked this week about sociology and history. So we can see that fake news is related to a range of ideas from sociology, history, and also semiology, which are the ideas of invented traditions, the ideas that nations only become nations when they take a number of facts about things that have happened in their location and turn them into a story about who people are. Fake news is related to myths, the idea that the fact of the image is often used to turn a number of contestable political arguments into things that people think are facts. And also black propaganda. We see from Howard Becker that in the middle part of the 20th century, there was a great deal of sociological interest in how deceptive messages could be used to undermine the morale of political opponents. And we can see very, very clear parallels between that interest and the way that there are contemporary interests in, for example, Russian manipulation of the last presidential election in the United States, for example. That in many ways would be regarded as a classic example of black propaganda. The difference that we're talking about here is that propaganda used to be something that was studied in the context of armed conflict, and now it's something which is seen to be in fake news much more a part and parcel of everyday political life. But all of these things reflect the reality that identity and politics are things that are crafted. And what I mean is that they are things which are not untrue, but they need to be stitched together through the synthesis of facts and stories. I mean, there is no politics until people start telling stories about who a particular group is, what their values are, what they believe, and what they think should be done. And these things have to be made. And the notion of fake news is clearly related to that process, and also, I suppose, articulates the fear that that process is somehow being corrupted and polluted by digital technologies. But there are some other things that Claire Wardle in particular begins to allude to, and one of the things that I find most notable about her work is that having gone through the very important typologies of fake news, misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, the releasing of information which is true but normally that would be kept private and regarded as confidential and sensitive, is that while she talks about the importance of facts as either being true or false, in much the same way as Eric Hobsbawm would have talked about as history being based on truth, on things that really, really did happen. She also alerts us to the fact that above all of this is the idea that political communication is really often about emotion, not facts. One of the reasons why fake news works so well is because it provokes emotional responses that tell us that really the issue is not so much facts as what people want to believe to be true about the world. And we're going to be picking up on that next week. One of the things that we see then is that fake news is also important because it is part of a set of developments in media research that have really shifted the goalposts in research on political communication. As part of a broader understanding that media communication is not simply about the provision of information, but about the provoking of emotional response. And that's where we're going to be picking up next week. But for now, the last exercise I want you to do is I want you to find a piece of fake news. I want you to find a piece of fake news, and I want you to tell me in the tutorials, how do you know it's fake? Where's it coming from? What's it trying to achieve? And what does this exercise also tell you about the difficulties of, of the idea that fake news, one of the best ways of counteracting fake news is to, in fact, teach ourselves to be vigilant about when we encounter it. So I'll see you in class.